wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got some special guests joining us today.
Who we got?
Jason Flom and Jordan Grotzinger. Did I say it right?
Grotzinger. Take two. I'll take it.
Close.
How are y'all this
good morning,
man?
Doing great. Happy to be here again. Appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely. They're here to talk to us about Billy Allen.
Billy Allen.
What's Billy Allen's story?
Well, Billy Allen, we really want to focus on a couple of cases. I mean, Pierre Rushing is the guy that brought Jordan in to talk about. Jordan is representing Pierre Rushing in the Oakland case, and he's been representing him pro bono. And and he's like, I have a pit bull, and this guy's a pit bull. He's more pit bull than my pit bull.
Okay.
And they've already proven that Pierre is innocent, but yet he's languishing in prison, serving a 50-year to life sentence. So I wanted Jordan to be able to talk about that from a legal perspective, because I think it's really going to open a lot of people's eyes. You're going to be shaking your head and scratching and going, how can this be?
So Jordan, tell us what's going on.
Jordan.
I appreciate the platform because we need to bring attention to cases like these because there's such a backlog both in court and the DA. So even when you have such compelling evidence like we do, he's still he's still in prison and doesn't understand why the prison doors haven't just snapped unlocked when the one witness in the case has completely recanted. And he doesn't want to hear about, wheels of justice turn slowly. It's a process. He's an innocent guy, and he doesn't get this. So I appreciate this platform to bring some focus on this case because we do think it will help. So quickly about this case, Pierre is a 34-year-old black man in Oakland. He was convicted 12 years ago for murder. He's serving 50 to life. There was one witness in the case. Without this witness, there is no conviction. This man was a 7-time felon, a serial crack abuser. He used crack 4 to 6 times a day. He was high at the time of the crime. He changed his description of Mr. Rushing by 6 inches, 100 pounds, and skin color, effectively describing a different person.
Damn.
There was no physical or forensic evidence. The one witness said that the perp was known as C, the letter C, which is not in Mr. Rushing's name and has never been his nickname, and he had an alibi. 2 other witnesses came forward in post-conviction proceedings before we got involved to say, who were there, to say it wasn't him. And he missed an appeal by the skin of his teeth, really due to technicalities, and I'm not going to get into the legal weeds. But we came on board about a year and a half ago because I heard Jason on Joe Rogan with our friend Josh Dubin, and then I started listening to your podcast. And one of the episodes of your podcast was about Pierre Rushing. I thought, wow, here's a guy who is young. He's got a lot of life to live.
And he was an aspiring hip-hop artist. He was a talented young man with making videos, making records, like on his way, on the come-up for real. And it all got snatched away from him. And, it makes me think, how many more incredibly talented artists are we missing out on as a society who could be contributing? Is there another Jay-Z that's stuck in the prison system that we never heard their name? It has to be.
Not just artists. I mean, anything. Architects, engineers,
Doctors,
lawyers,
attorneys.
That's right. Just brilliant minds.
Fathers, mothers.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Everybody in there, it's a ripple effect. And what it does to the people who have children and how it affects those families. It's really, it's an epidemic.
So what does it take for a judge to overturn the
here's where we are in our
Before
case.
we do that, I want to go back to Pierre Rushing. So if they didn't have any evidence and he had an alibi and everything that you said, it seems like there's no possible way he should have been convicted. Why was he convicted in the first place?
The main reason he was convicted in the first place is because he chose to testify. And he was a young, scared kid at the time and got tripped up on some frivolous stuff. Like this happened at about 3 a.m. on April 15th. He was with his girlfriend at his grandmother's house. That was his alibi. But he got tripped up on that because he originally told police that he was at his father's house on April 15th. But that's only because he didn't realize what time of day they were asking about. They said, where were you on April 15th? They didn't say, where were you at 3 a.m? So it was frankly frivolous stuff like that where just, again, by the skin of his teeth, he gets convicted. And let me tell you where we are in this case now to your question, Charlamagne, because
how do you overturn the ruling?
Knock on wood, I think we're close. So When we got involved, we hired one of the best investigators in the game. His name is Grant Fine. He's actually a Harvard law grad. He was in the same law school class as Obama and Justice Gorsuch, two very different people. But he helped us find witnesses. And long story short, February of this year, we got a sworn statement from another individual who was actually charged for and did time in this crime. He was the one who got out of the car with the perpetrator and confronted the victim. So he's doing time actually for something else, but he did time for this crime and he's still in prison. For years, he didn't talk. We persuaded him years later to talk. He signed a sworn statement saying, here's a picture of Pierre Rushing. I knew him from the neighborhood. This wasn't him. Okay? No incentive to lie. No reason to do this other than just to tell the truth. And then Super Bowl weekend comes around this year. And we've got our eye out for the main witness who kind of disappears in and out of the street because he's a crackhead, serial criminal. And so he's off the grid a lot. And we didn't even know if he was alive. On Super Bowl weekend, he pops up on our investigators' radar. He's in county jail in Alameda. So miraculously, we arrange a meeting. He takes the meeting. And our investigator is a pro with a soft touch. I prepare a statement. He's been in county for a couple days, so he's stone sober and lucid, and he's super friendly and has a conversation with our guy and signs a statement after talking to him and reading the declaration carefully that says, quote, contrary to my testimony, Mr. Rushing was not known as C, was not present at the scene of the crime, and was not the person who shot Mr. Taylor. I did not see Mr. Rushing at all on April 11th, 2011, April 15th, 2011. I make this declaration because I want to come clean and correct an injustice. Mr. Rushing is innocent of this crime and should be set free.
Man, how do we get people like that locked up?
That is the one, that's the only witness. There's nobody else now.
Damn.
That makes 5 witnesses between Pierre and the trial and the post-conviction proceedings that says it wasn't him. And the one guy who says it was, when he's sober, comes back and comes clean and signs this declaration. So where are we now? We filed a habeas petition, which is essentially a motion to set him free in March. We started writing that thing as soon as we got those declarations. We told the DA's office before we were even finished with the petition, we said, hey, look at these declarations. The one guy has recanted and another guy who's in a totally different place has independently said it wasn't him. What are you going to do? We'll review it. Okay. File the petition, send them the petition. You guys going to take a position on this? You're going to oppose? You're going to agree with us? No, we'll review it. The court gives the government until early July to file a brief and take a position. We still don't know the answer. Now, it's good news that they've not said no, that they've not said we're going to oppose this thing. But it is literally driving our client crazy that he can't get. I mean, I'm a lawyer, right? I sit at a desk in front of a computer. I write this stuff. It's a job. It's more than a job, but it's a job to me. For him, it's his life. And I can't tell him, oh, Pierre, it's a process. Pierre, wheels of justice and all that. He says to me, I'm not trying to hear that. I am going crazy in there. And in fact, last week, he started a hunger strike because he just wants an answer. And so that's why I'm particularly grateful that we're here, because there's a couple of things that people can do just to bring attention on this case. I get that there's a backlog, right? There's always a lot of habeas petitions. A lot of people are saying they're innocent. I can't imagine there's a lot as compelling as this. I mean, with the facts of this case, this is the stuff of documentaries, right? This is the stuff of movies.
Jordan, I want to jump in for a second, because you obviously talk fast like a lawyer. And first of all, shout out to Greenberg Traurig. That's the firm that Jordan is with. They're donating huge amounts of time to this case and to other cases. And that we need more and more money. There's obviously some great lawyers that listen to your show. Anybody that wants to get involved, we welcome the support. There's so many wrongfully convicted people out there that need the help, that don't have representation. But one point that I want to go back to that you raised is that when they went to interview Pierre about where were you on the night of the murder or the day of the murder, that was over a month later, right? So imagine that. They go, Charlamagne, where were you? Where are we now? We're in the middle of June. Where were you on May 17th? You're like, How do you remember that? I mean, unless it was your birthday or some other significant day, how are you going to remember exactly where you were at what time on a particular day that's over a month ago? And this happens a lot in cases. I'm just shouting that out because people, when you do serve on a jury, and I hope that your listeners will serve on juries, and take a hard look and remember that the people that we trust to uphold the laws, to enforce the laws.
It's something that reminds me of when Remy Ma was up here, and they were saying, one of the bad things about the court system is they don't look for the truth. They look for convictions.
Right.
And the sad part about it is, everything that you're telling me now is they really didn't have enough. You know what I mean? He had an alibi. Nobody seen him. There was no video. You had one guy who is a known drug addict who was on drugs that day that said he was him, and the fact that he was convicted scares the shit out of me. Because they had no proof, you know what I mean? Was it a court-appointed attorney?
Yeah.
Who was probably overworked, overwhelmed?
At first it was. That's right.
So that scares me because now this brother's been spending how long in jail?
Almost 12 years.
Almost 12 years. So I'm not going to say when he does come out, what happens from then?
That's a whole nother challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's something I've been, as you guys know, because I've been on the show before, I'm very, very, devoted to that exact issue of why we as a society, when people come home, innocent or guilty, we should be building ramps for them to get back into the community, to contribute, to be able to lead productive lives. If they paid their debt and they were guilty, or if they're innocent. But instead, we build walls outside the prisons, and we make more hurdles they have to jump over, and all these restrictions. And it's like, and then we don't go out and commit a crime. And when a person's out there and their other option is to starve, right? Which in many cases it really is. And then we go, yeah, but don't we don't want to see any recidivism here or anything like that. But other countries, other Western countries, they do that. They create, programs and you don't need a lot. It's amazing. University of Chicago did a study. They instituted a program where people coming home from prison about a month before they were being released, they paid them $15 an hour to take job training. And when they came home, it was a program that went on for several weeks after that, paying them $15 an hour to take job training. And then they studied it, and they found that those people were about 90%. These are people who were convicted of gun crimes. These people were about 90% less likely to get shot or shoot anybody else than the people who didn't go through these programs. Because my basic premise is what causes crime is desperation. And what prevents crime, it's not police and prisons, it's hope. And so here you are, you're taking these people and you're saying, we're not giving you a king's ransom. We're giving you an opportunity to feed yourself and maybe be able to put some food on the table for your family. And lo and behold, the results are profound and everybody's safer as a result. By the way, I wanted to shout out before I forget, because I will forget, because I get so excited talking about this stuff, but there's these things happen in clusters, right? We know that there are police and prosecutors that are involved in wrongful conviction cases, one after the other. And this week, as we're sitting here in New Haven, Connecticut, there's a week-long rally being held on the steps of the Department of Justice at 157 Church Street in New Haven every day from, I think it's 11 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. Gaylord Salters, who was wrongfully convicted there, served 20 years. He has highlighted the fact that in New Haven, they have half of all the wrongful convictions in Connecticut. And New Haven's a small place compared to the state of Connecticut. So, and it's always seeming like the same group of police and prosecutors that are involved, as they were in his case. I'm going to be speaking there on June 14th, right after this airs, I guess. So if people are listening now, come out on June 14th. I'll be there 2:00. I'll be there with Kalia Ali, Muhammad Ali's daughter. She's going to speak, as well as Derek Hamilton, Jeffrey Deskovic, other exonerated men. And it's going to be a great event. So come out to the Department of Justice, 157 Church Street in New Haven. Come out on the 14th, or if you can't make it on the 14th, come the 13th, the 15th. But I'll be there on the 14th. I want to see everybody out there. And check out the Wrongful Conviction podcast. By the way, I want to shout out my son, Mike Flom, who's in the studio with us today.
What up, Mike?
A true believer and a great music guy.
I want to ask, how many wrongfully accused cases get overturned?
So, since 1989.
That's Andy Danny graph right there.
That's you tell he's a good attorney. Goes, all right, let me go to the right.
This is a printout from what's called the National Registry of Exonerations. It's maintained by the University of Michigan, and it keeps track of this stuff. Since 1989, there have been 3,326 exonerations. And if you add up the amount of time wrongfully served, that is more than 29,500 years lost.
Damn.
And if you break that up by race, guess which color are black folks? It's the orange bar.
Of course.
Way more than all others. So the numbers are crazy. And I'm sorry if I was talking fast. I'm used to being in a hearing where a judge only gives me so much time and I got to get my points in. But I do want to say a couple of concrete ways that people can help to bring attention to this case. And to your point, Envy, you said that it's not about the truth. People want convictions. I'm really hopeful that at this point in the case, when the facts are what they are, and we've got a sworn statement from the only witness completely recanting, and we've got a good reformer DA named Pamela Price, that now in this case, for the first time, we're going to be on the same team because we have a mutual goal, and that is to achieve justice.
It just seems so odd that somebody would take so much time because it's not even like you're saying you're displaying the facts.
Yes.
So it's not even like you say, well, you have to go figure it out. If you're giving them everything, I still don't understand how somebody would want a man in jail that obviously shouldn't be there to spend an extra day in jail.
Totally agree. And look, I get they can't take my word for it. And I get there's a backlog, as I said, both at the DA level and the court level. But I do feel like, and now I'm getting way ahead of myself, but in terms of some sort of political reform, it would be great if there were offices in DAs around the country that sort of had an emergency board to filter out the true emergency habeas petitions. Because I don't know how many are pending in Alameda County. I'm sure there's a ton. But I am also sure that none is as compelling as this one, where you've got the only witness recanting among all the other crazy weaknesses to this case. So how can people help who are listening to the Breakfast Club right now? A few things. You can write to DA Pamela Price at 1225 Fallon Street, Fallon, Oakland, California, 94612, and ask her to please free Pierre Rushing. You can tag the DA's office in Instagram at Alameda County DA and ask it to please free Pierre Rushing.
Any phone number?
Go have a petty party. We need a petty party in those DMs.
And you Google the Alameda County DA's office for the phone number. I didn't have that written down. But Pierre's family also has an Instagram handle, and I think it would be meaningful to him and his family if it was followed. That's at Justice for Pierre Rushing. So if people could do that, I think that, like I said, if the right people focus on this, there's only one just outcome, and I think we're going to get there, and I appreciate you guys trying to push us over the goal line.
I got one more question.
I got one more question before you do the other. I want to ask, Charlamagne gave an attorney donkey today for using ChatGPT. Right? So what is your thought on ChatGPT? And if he used it, I'm sure there's a lot of attorneys out there that are using it because they don't necessarily want to do the work. What's your thoughts on it?
My opinion is, and this has been borne out in some recent stories in the law business, it is too early to rely on that. There was actually a story in the news about 2 weeks ago. I think it was an attorney in New York who asked ChatGPT to write a brief, and it did immediately, and cited a bunch of cases, and it looked plausible. And the judge reads it, and those cases didn't even exist. And another example is my day job is trade secret law. I deal with litigation and advice on what's called trade secrets. It's a kind of intellectual property. And I have a monthly podcast on the subject. And I was messing around with my next episode. I had a particular issue in mind. And so I asked ChatGPT, hey, ChatGPT, tell me the difference between agency law and the concept of indirect misappropriation under trade secret law. I know I'm speaking gibberish right now, but that's a real issue, right? So it spit back at me the right statutes and said, well, it might be this, it might be that. So it's onto something, but it's not there yet.
So you had to go read it and realize what was right and what was wrong.
Yeah, I knew it was an incomplete answer.
See, that's what the lawyer didn't do that. He just repeated what he saw.
Too early to do that.
Now, I wanted to ask, how, when you talk about cases like Pierre, cases like, Billy, who I mentioned before, how do you know who to represent because they're actually innocent and who's just saying they're innocent?
So for me, Charlamagne, I've gotten as far as I have in the music industry by trusting my instincts. And, you can't just go on instincts. We have research and typically for me, when I get referred a case for my wrongful conviction podcast, and I was going to encourage people, listen to the Pierre Rushing episode as you're writing your letters or doing your DMs or whatever it is, so you'll be more informed on it. You'll hear the story in Pierre's own words. And you can hear it on Spotify or Apple or iHeart or anywhere. We are with iHeart, so this feels like home here. But typically when cases come my way for the podcast or for me to get involved in helping, bringing in great attorneys or whatever else I can do, talking to governors, talking to elected officials, pressure breaks pipes. So that's what we try to bring the pressure. And that's what you're doing right now, you guys. So it's typically referred to me by an innocence organization or an attorney who's already done a lot of research on the case. Sometimes it's a family member. Sometimes it's somebody themselves writing me from death row, like Billy Allen, or it could be any source. But we vet it in any case. We have a research team, and with the sheer vast number of wrongfully convicted people in this awful system of ours, it's I haven't been wrong too often. I've had to admit that I was wrong a couple of times and back off from a case, but that's a drop in the bucket, and it's interesting, it's such an epidemic, these wrongful convictions. We ran into in the elevator or downstairs, actually, walked up with Mano, and
Smooth to Mano.
Yeah, and he was talking to me about a case that he wants help with, a guy named Earl Jefferson in Brooklyn who's been in for 32 years for a crime. He wasn't even anywhere near the scene when it happened. And it's like, you hear these stories. I got a guy, Taisheem Crocker. I want to shout him out because he was on our show. Such an incredible, incredible guy. And York, Pennsylvania, another hotbed like New Haven is of wrongful convictions. So many guys' cases out of there that we've highlighted, Lorenzo Johnson. And Taisheem, his case sticks out to me. He's been in for 26 years already. And in his case, the actual killer, who the prosecutors admitted to the mother of the victim was a guy named Clark, and the killer was a guy named Steele. And the prosecutor said, no, we're not going to prosecute. We're going to prosecute these other guys. We're going to use him as a witness. And she was like, I don't understand. Why aren't you prosecuting the guy who killed my son? And they were like, because it's kind of easier to get these other guys. I hope you can understand. Like that kind of a vibe, right?
Jesus.
And they prosecuted Taisheem and a guy named Bethune, and they've been in for 26 years, even though they admitted that they knew that the real shooter was this guy Steele, who they cut a deal with, who got like 2.5 years in prison. It's like, this is how upside down and back, and that goes back to what you were saying, NB, right? There's this saying, a body for a body, right? And you're absolutely right that what they want is a conviction. They want to win,
right?
And that's wrong. We have an adversarial system, and what we should have is an inquisitorial system, right? Everybody should want the same thing, which is that if there is, in fact, a violent crime that happened, then somebody did it. And that person is the one that we should be, and we could disagree on sentencing or this or that. We talk about bail reform. We can talk about this stuff all day. But
let's just make sure we get the right person.
Let's get the right person.
Yeah.
And when we get the wrong person, and I think even people who are super conservative, like on this stuff, even they can look at it and go, well, okay, sometimes I try to appeal them and say, well, when we lock up the wrong person, the actual perpetrator, almost by definition, remains free. And often that person goes on to inflict more terrible damage on people who should never know that fate. But we take our eye off that ball when we go down this rabbit hole, when we get tunnel vision and we say, we got Pierre Rushing, good enough. You know what I mean? Let's win. And then it's kind of like this weird sick scorecard. And it just it hurts me in my soul because it could happen to anyone. It really can.
Tell them where to go again, Jordan, so we can raise some hell about this.
Yeah, please write to District Attorney Pamela Price at 1225 Fallon Street, Fallon, Oakland, California, 94612. Tag the DA's office on Instagram at Alameda County DA and ask to please free Pierre Rushing. And please follow Pierre's handle on Instagram at Justice for Pierre Rushing. The more we could bring attention to this, like I said, I think we're on the 1 yard line here. I'm optimistic. I think this is a good DA. I think they're going to do the right thing. We just need to get this focused.
She is a good DA, and please be respectful in all of your communications. This is a DA who really cares about justice, and it shows you, right? We have a good DA, and yet it's this difficult, even in the face of overwhelming evidence of actual innocence, it's still that hard, which is why I've been focused recently on trying to elect good DAs in different locations, because we have to stop this stuff at the top of the funnel. And I don't want to leave Billy Allen out of the conversation either. You started off talking about him. Billy Allen's a guy who was I featured him on my show, on my podcast, Wrongful Conviction, and he's on death row in the federal system, where he's been for over a quarter century now. And it's another case where
very similar to Pierre, right?
There's powerful evidence that he was at the mall when this bank robbery happened. He was shopping. He had receipts. I mean, you sit there and go, how could this be? And he's sentenced to death. And it's it's an awful crime. It was a bank robbery. The guard was killed. I don't want to diminish that in any way. But this is a man who's, and again, this shouldn't matter either, but he happens to be an incredibly talented artist, poet. And when you hear his words, if you listen to his episode of my show, you're going to be like, this guy is on a different level. I mean, I can't even describe his artwork, his thought process, and yet he's in a literal dungeon. And while the federal, Biden has suspended all executions, right? There's no executions under Biden. But if a Republican gets back in there, they're going to start it up again, you can be sure. And with his name starting with A, he might be the first to go.
Yeah. We appreciate you two brothers for joining us. Thank you so much. You guys are always invited.
You
Let us
already
know
know,
these cases.
Jason.
Please.
Thank you very much for all the work that you do, man.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, I want to throw that
Jordan,
right back
thank
at
you.
you guys, because, this platform is so important. You have such an incredible audience, and the way we're going to see change is because of people like you guys, and because of platforms like this, and because audiences like yours who want to get active, who just need that little extra,
Push.
Here's how you do it, right? And that's what we're here to shine that light. So we appreciate you guys a lot.
All right.
Couldn't do it without you.
Thank you.
Pierre was really struggling. He is really struggling. But when he heard, it was actually his idea. Hey, I think Jason knows Charlamagne. Can you see? And when you were able to pull this off, and thank you for putting us on so quickly, he was so happy. And those little things in this struggle are so important. So thank you both so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
And to learn more, if I could just shout out my Instagram, it's Jason Flom, ITS Jason Flom, JSONFLOM. Follow me. I'm posting about cases and different things that you can do on the regular. So, follow me, DM me if you know something that I need to know about, and let's work together and fix this.
Jordan, you have IG?
Yeah, at Jordan Grotzinger.
All right. Well, we appreciate you brothers for joining us.
Absolutely.
It's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.
Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.